Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by Peter Baracchini, Dayton Reimer. We're now past the draft lottery now. Dayton and I did a bit of a short episode yesterday about it, and it came out this morning, or it came out yesterday, actually, and had some quick thoughts on it, but Peter, just before we get started, what are your thoughts on the draft lottery? I mean, two surprises, two teams that weren't supposed to rise up to where they are. I thought it. Islanders jumped from 10 to 1, and then Utah went to 4th. Just some quick thoughts on the lottery there. I mean, the Sharks didn't win it, even though they had the best odds.
Yeah, I mean, they did have the best odds, but I think they can live with the second overall pick, considering they won it last year with Macklin Celebrini. Their prospect pool is already deep with names like Quentin Musty, Sam Dickinson, Igor Chernyshев. You know, they got a lot of quality and depth up front. I think they could have used that Matthew Zator type player up on the back end. But, you know, I do think right now, obviously it was a big surprise with the Islanders winning the lottery itself. I don't think many expected that to happen, but now they have another chance to draft first overall. John Tavares being the last one since. I think they dictate the way the draft is going to go, because as we've talked about before with, you know, farm system rankings and all that, the Islanders are very, very bare up front and on the back end. So they could use the likes of a Matthew Zator and or a Michael Misa. So at this point right now, it's who are they going to take at this point? I'm seeing other things like James Hagen's being taken first overall as well, because he is a Long Island boy. I don't see how he's going to be better than Misa and or Zator at this point, because Zator is a bona fide number one defender. Misa is probably the next, or probably in terms of players making the jump quickly, I think he's going to be one of those players that could really make the jump as soon as possible because of that work ethic, the drive, the offensive skill set. And for Utah too, for them to go up into the top 5 as well. I mean, a little bit of a surprise as well, because, you know, they were kind of teetering on that playoff push kind of thing, and just fell short. But now they could add another quality prospect into their system where they could choose to go for a wing. They could choose to go for a center. I mean, the possibilities are endless for both of those teams right now, especially for Utah, because, you know, they got a lot of depth already in their system coming up and making the jump soon. But I think the New York Islanders getting the first overall pick was definitely a major blessing for that organization, because of the fact that they're very, very bare. They don't have a whole lot to go with. So, that was my initial thoughts. You know, it's shocking to see, but, you know, it's something that, you know, you don't want to. I mean, you want to see as a result of it, because you're the last place team, you're not guaranteed the first overall pick. So it's like tanking is kind of not a thing anymore, or it could be because you have the best odds, but look out for those teams that didn't tank, because who knows, the balls may fall in their favor. And it luckily did that for the New York Islanders.
Yeah, I said to Dayton yesterday that it's good to see another team, a different team getting the first overall pick than seeing the Sharks or the Blackhawks or, you know, those types getting up there. And Utah, I mean, they got a strong prospect pool. They're going to get another really good player at 4. You know, they're going to get really good centermen, probably. I mean, I don't know if they got a pretty good center depth, but that's where all the centers are at the top there. So I would think that they're probably going to pick one of those guys. But we'll see. We'll do our mock draft and see who we pick, or whoever gets Utah, and see who they pick there. But let's move on and talk about the under 18s, which wrapped up this past weekend. And gold medal goes to Team Canada against Team Sweden. Sweden goes silver. USA gets the bronze, and Slovakia, unfortunately, gets nothing. But they were in the medal rounds there. So we're just going to go and talk about some standouts from that tournament. Lots of great performances. Sweden, I mean, dominated the top of the stat board or the leaderboard with the top 3 scorers. So, but they didn't win gold. They were actually shut out 7-0 in the gold medal game, which was a little surprising to me. because they were really dominant throughout, but Canada was too. So you're looking at two strong teams going up against each other. I thought it was going to be maybe a bit of a closer game, but ended up being a blowout. So we're going to start with the bronze medal game, talk about the teams there. And I'll start with you, Dayton. From Team Slovakia, we'll start with Slovakia. They're always a team that you're not really sure with these tournaments if they're going to be good or they're going to not be good. And they ended up being, had a chance at a medal. Who stood out for you, and either in the game or in the tournament itself?
Yeah, I feel like they really held their own against the Americans, and the Americans always do have a pretty strong program. It hasn't been quite as strong as in years past, of course, but they're always a medal contender. And Slovakia, like you said, it's sometimes hard to predict, and they were very nearly a medal winner, which is awesome for that program. In that bronze medal game, Jan Chauvin, he was pretty strong, had a goal, 2 assists. I believe that was the point leader for the team, at least in that game. And then you had Michael Siversek, who put in 2 goals to make it a very, very close affair. And yeah, those are 2 guys that I believe are both up for the draft. I know Chauvin is. I don't think
Siversek is. Yeah.
Okay. That was the one that I wasn't 100% sure on, but yeah, no, both guys looked really good. Radivojevic, I think, he's a strong defender. I like him when I watch him. I'm really interested to see when or if he goes, because he's kind of been ranked all over the place. Sometimes a 2nd round pick, sometimes like barely a 7th. People seem to be concerned about his size, and I get it. He is small, but I think he looked pretty solid in this tournament too.
For sure. Radivojevic, he is. I don't know if he's related to the other Radivojevic that's in the NHL, but he's a guy that's been talked about as potentially being a higher pick. But yeah, we'll see where he goes. But Slovakia, a couple of their guys were in the top. Like you said, Chauvin was their leader in points overall as well, too. So tied with, I just had it here, tied with Tomas Shrenko with 8 points, and they both had 5 goals and 3 assists. So they were the leaders there. So yeah, 4-3 against the Americans. So they ended up making a really close game too. So Peter, you have anyone you want to point out from Slovakia?
No, those are the main ones that really stood out too. But I will say I would throw Michael Prattle in there as well. For a lot of talk about goaltending being probably a little bit more of a stronger class this time around, where all the talk is of, Joshua Ravensbergen, Jack Ivankovic, who is phenomenal for Team Canada. I guess we're going to be talking about him very soon. Prattle really stood tall in his head at certain moments for Slovakia, and I thought he looked really good, and I think he may have probably increased his draft stock just slightly a little bit more and could be in that talk where, he could be one of those top goaltenders taken. He's ranked 3rd overall by Central Scouting for European skaters. 914 save percentage during this tournament and 246 goals against average, 4-3 record. He's definitely a big reason why Slovakia came close to winning a gold medal. And obviously when you're pushing a team like the United States, albeit a weaker class for the USA team this year, still a phenomenal feat for Slovakia to take them all the way to extra time. That is very huge. Unfortunately, they fell short, but I really thought Prattle really stood tall in his head. I really thought he gave him a fighting chance, and he just looked very, very strong. And I think he did a good chance to, improve his value a little bit more heading into the draft.
Yeah, he's definitely now a goaltender to watch moving forward too, and puts himself in that group of the other guys we've been talking about already. So yeah, definitely a guy to keep an eye on in the draft now. All right, moving to Team USA. Peter, I'll start with you. Anyone you want to kind of shout out from there? LJ Mooney, Will Moore were their top point getters in the tournament. So who do you want to talk about there in Team USA?
Yeah, for all the talk and inconsistency that William Moore had, he really stood up as one of the top producers for Team USA. And that's a really great sight to see, because there were talks at the beginning of the draft year how he could be, maybe a top 15 pick, but it's slightly fallen off because of the offensive upside, because of his consistency. But I think the showing really solidified of the fact that he's at least worth a early second round pick, possibly pushing first round still, because of that size, that two-way game. He's very, very confident on both sides of the puck. I maybe not this year's draft, but Mikey Burchild looked really, really strong as a kind of an underager, because it is a U18 tournament. He's up for the draft next year. I thought he looked really, really strong. Colin Potter, I was a big fan of his, despite not having great production at the NCAA level. When he takes control of the game, has control of the puck, and he's pushing that pace, he's one of the more lethal players out there, and I really, really liked his game for Team USA. And on the fence, Asher Barnett, I think he was a really big surprise for a lot of people here. He's got the size, he's got that mobility, he's got that frame on the back end, and kind of had a little bit more of offensive push that people wanted to see, and he was a little bit more productive this time around. So those are the main ones that really stood out for me for Team USA. I mean, obviously, I'm going to throw an LJ Mooney in there, who has fallen significantly in terms of like his stat or standing in the draft rankings. I believe by Central Scouting, he fell to 206, and a lot of people are having him as a, mid to late second, early to mid third kind of range for a prospect. The teams are having their doubts about him. I mean, I understand he's 5'7", 157 pounds. That size is going to come into play, but, he was very productive and very dynamic for Team USA. So those are some of the names that really stood out for me.
Yeah, I mean, we've shown so many times with size. But tons of skill. I mean, 11 points in the 7 games, so pretty good production. And Cullen Potter with the 4 goals in the tournament too. So yeah, they were definitely standouts. Dayton, you have anyone you want to talk about from Team USA? Hasn't been mentioned there.
Yeah, I mean, Peter hit a lot of the top guys. Cullen Potter is a lot of fun to watch when he gets that puck. He is so fast. I love a good skater. One guy who actually stood out to me, though, is William Horkoff. I thought he had a great tournament.
Yeah.
Not a massive producer. He finished with just, I think, 4 points, 2 goals, 4 points. Yeah. But he looked really solid when he was on the ice. I saw a couple of clips of him. I think it was against Sweden. And yeah, he just had a really good presence. He's a good skater, especially for someone 6'4". I think, yeah, he's got a great presence, great head on his shoulders. It helps that, his dad is, or not his dad. Is he not? No, I'm on the wrong thing. Yes, his dad is Sean Horkoff. Yeah. I clicked on my other tab and I got very confused for a second. That's the problem of having a dozen tabs open at all times. Yes, I am that person. But no, he's got great bloodlines. Sean Horkoff was a very solid NHLer, and he's right in that mold. I think he's going to be an excellent second round pick. And just, I think, was pretty much established with the strong tournament here.
For sure, yeah, we'll see where he goes, ultimately goes in the draft for sure. All right, moving to the gold medal game, and Team Sweden. There's an obvious name here that is pretty big. Philip Ekberg led the tournament in goals with 10. 10 goals, 18 points in the 7 games, so he was dominant. Sasha Boumdienne, 14 points, and then Ivar Stenberg with 13 points. So they were the top 3 points in the tournament. So those 3 definitely. So I'll start with you, Dayton, because you wrote his prospect profile not that long ago. It was actually released, I believe it was this morning. So make sure to check that out. So Philip Ekberg, a big standout for Team Sweden. Unfortunately, didn't score in the gold medal game. No one did. So what do you think about his tournament?
Man, he is an excellent player. He has so much skill, just kind of like oozes offensive ability. He can move the puck so quickly. And I think one of his biggest positive attributes is his patience. I was watching him wait until the last second to pull that puck away from somebody and then zip around. And then he's got all this speed that he can make incredible moves happen instantaneously. He had a bit of a struggle earlier in the season. There was some illness, there was some coaching issues, but I think he really established himself as a potential top prospect in this tournament. Like, I don't know if a lot of players have more pure skill than he does. I think you could maybe count them on one hand, two hands. There is some, of course, concerns about size, strength, those kind of things, as there always is and there always will be. But he is unbelievably talented and setting a Swedish record for the most points in this tournament, leading the tournament with 10 goals. He couldn't have done anything more than he did. That was, I think, the perfect tournament for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely increased his stock after this. I mean, he was a guy that I didn't really know too much about him. Like, see Tim score 10 goals. Like, yeah, got to look at a bit more on this guy. He does playing in the CHL this season too. So Ottawa 67s. So he has North American. He's not just playing in Sweden. He is in North America, not doing a lot big points or big goals over here, but maybe he'll this will give him some confidence for next season and see what he can do. Peter, what about you? I mean, as I mentioned, a couple other guys. Ivar Stenberg, not far behind with 8 goals. So anyone else you want to kind of delve into a bit more?
Yeah, I feel like we're going to be talking a lot about Ivar Stenberg and Viggo Bjork next season, considering how they're probably going to be the next ones to fall in line after Gavin McKenna. Yeah, they looked absolutely fantastic. Stenberg with his finishing ability, Bjork with his pace, high-end skill set, absolutely phenomenal. But, you know, a lot of Sacha Boumedienne, like the fact that he was labeled as one of those top defenders this year, didn't quite have the best start at college. And again, the consistency factor really wasn't there. He was struggling to find his game, but kind of had basically a better second half, which is what you wanted to do after, you know, you didn't have the hot start. You didn't have anything going for you. What happens in the second half, I think, will dictate the rest of how your draft year is going to be. And it was just very consistent for him after that. Him coming over, being a dynamic force and playmaking dynamo on the back end for Sweden. He had 13 assists, 14 points. It was just absolutely phenomenal. There was a sense of urgency from him where he was pushing the pace of play. Everything ran through him from the back end. He was in control. And that's what you want to see in a strong puck-moving defender, where he has all those attributes, where he's very dynamic offensively. He's got the speed. He's got the skating abilities. He's got the ability to be a factor at 5-on-5 and on the power play. Really, I think cemented himself as a first round selection, considering how he may have fallen off by the midway point. But right now, I think he really, really stood tall. You know, I know everyone's going to probably point to Anton Frondell's, 3 points in 5 games, but I'm so a big fan of his two-way game. Even when he's not producing, he's very, very energetic. He's very strong. He's got great poise. He's very smart with his play away from the puck and his positioning. He's just one name that I obviously wrote his profile on, and I'm not being biased at all. But I really think that he's one of these top centermen that could develop very much into a very sound two-way type of centerman that can center your top line. And again, he may not have the high-end production, but that two-way ability and competitive edge where he's pressuring players, that's going to stand out a lot, and it's going to resonate with a lot of teams. So don't let the points fool you. Frondell is still very much in as a potential top 5 pick, but Boumedienne, I thought really cemented himself as a potential first rounder right now.
For sure. 13 assists in the tournament with 14 points. So, I mean, that definitely stands out. And I mean, the same with, Frondell. I mean, the one thing about the NHL is that you can make it quicker if you have that good two-way game already. And I think he definitely has that. And he has scoring ability. And so that's why he's been talked about in the top 5. So I don't think this tournament is going to deter teams from we're going to probably pick him in the top 5. I think it's still going to happen. So, I don't think that really did a lot. Yeah, it's just short tournaments too, so you can't take too much from it. And I mean, looking at teams like Klimovich, mean, he got drafted higher because of his U18s, but you can't really take that into account because he hasn't blown up the NHL because of it. So we'll see. All right, let's talk about the gold medalists, Team Canada. And I'll start with you, Dayton, because I've got Braden Coots. So you've talked about him a lot on this on Prospect Corner quite a few times. And he led Team Canada in points with 12, had 6 goals in 7 games. So and was the captain of Team Canada too. So probably a guy that you want to talk about here.
I do, because he's fantastic and everyone should be talking about him. I think he had a little bit of criticism for his lack of production in the WHL. Like, he wasn't terrible. 26 points, 63 or so, 26 goals, 63 points in 60 games as Seattle Thunderbirds captain, which is fine. Not really what you'd expect from a top 15 pick, though, right? He is an incredibly hard worker, though. And I've mentioned this a couple of times already in previous episodes. When he's on the ice, things happen. And that's why the Thunderbirds thought he could be their captain. He leads by example. He is the first one in the corners trying to get the puck. He's right in front of the net, trying to make space. He is really smart about where he positions himself, and he's also very competitive. And you saw that with the Canadians. He was making things happen. That's why he led the team in points. He is just a really smart, hardworking player who can be relied on basically in every situation. And he needed a big under-18 tournament to solidify himself as a top pick. And he had that, right? I think he is well worth a top 16 selection. I don't know if he will be a top 16 selection. There's a few other guys that might have, raised their stock a little bit higher. But beyond that, you're getting a steal. This is a fantastically talented player who may not be a high scorer in the NHL, but put him on your second line and he will get things done. And that's what teams need.
For sure. Anyone else you want to talk? I mean, I kind of said you have to talk with him, but anyone else you want to?
Yeah, I'll throw in one more guy who's another one of my favorites, Cole Reshny. He's not quite as making things happen as Braden Coots. You don't notice him as much anyways. He's not a flashy player. He's not one of those guys who's just zipping all around the ice. But you pay attention to him for more than 5-10 minutes, and you'll notice how much he is orchestrating. He is a brilliant player, and I love seeing how well he did with Canada. He had some really, really good plays, and that led him to get 5 goals and 8 points in 5 games. I think he had maybe not as big of a point tournament as one would have hoped for a first-round pick, but I think it also put on display some of his really positive attributes in that he is also a very hard worker, and he is a great, I guess, for lack of a better term, quarterback on the front lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Reshny, I mean, I think so. Again, he's going to get drafted in the first round somewhere. We'll see where that is. But yeah, Coots and him are really good. I mean, Peter, do you have anyone you want to talk about? There were a lot of standouts for Canada because, of course, they were dominant in the tournament. What I found crazy was there was 20. I think it was 25. It was all comprised of CHL players for Team Canada, which is crazy. I mean, it's not always that way, but it ended up being that. So, anyone you want to shout out? There were quite a few, of course, that you could talk about.
I mean, I just want to give a bit of a shout out to Keaton Verhoff and Xavier Villeneuve. Two completely different style of defensemen for Team Canada, but showed their impact tremendously. Verhoff with his two-way game, mobility and all that, and Villeneuve with his offensive awareness and ability to walk the line, find the open space, and just wire pucks on net, even jump into the play too. His offensive vision is absolutely outstanding. So both of those guys are really strong on the back end for being younger players for Team Canada. So they were relied on heavily, especially Verhoff later on in the tournament. Jack Ivankovic, I mean, 961 save percentage, 105 goals against average, shutout in the gold medal game. I mean, everyone can talk about his size and goal, how it's not like, goaltending standard where it's like 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". He stops pucks. I mean, simple as that. And although maybe not the best regular season in the CHL, when he puts on that Canadian jersey, he's a force and a wall in net. So maybe teams may second guess the fact that, he may not be the biggest guy in net, but man, he can still stop pucks and he can still get his body in front and look tall despite having that size disadvantage. But first and foremost, I want to mention Brady Martin. He's my main one. Dude was an absolute monster out there. I mean, you look at the production, obviously just 1 point behind Braden Coots, 3 goals, 8 assists. And I think they had a lot of great chemistry out there. I think that Martin himself kind of go back and it reminds me of the way that Jetlachenko quickly started to gain a following and started to move his way up in the rankings, where Lachenko was a top 15 pick. I think Martin is going to be in the top 10. I think this tournament really solidified that with the work ethic, the drive, the energy, the in-your-face mentality, the physicality. I know that he was very physical and got ejected for one game in the semifinals against Slovakia, came back for the game against Sweden, and again, just had a very, very tremendous goal where he just walks the whole entire team and finds the back of the net. It may not seem like there may not be a lot of offensive upside at the next level, but he is still very creative and very smart with his positioning, with the puck, ability to open things up. And that hardworking mindset is going to take him far. Teams are going to take note of that, and I think someone will take him within that top 10. Another underrated name that I think is starting to get a little bit of attention now is Lev Katzin. 10.7 games. Not on a lot of radars to begin with, even heading into this tournament too. It didn't seem like there was a whole lot of talk about him because he is 5'8", 176. Again, 5'8". He's not 6 feet. No one's really going to talk about him. But, he went from the Green Bay Gamblers to the Guelph Storm, and he was over a point per game with the Guelph Storm. And the Storm, I believe they weren't that strong in the standings. I'm going to double check the history of their record, if I'm just going to double check the OHL site, but I'm still going to talk about Katzin himself. I mean, he was just absolutely dynamic. He was a ball of, he was basically a little Energizer bunny out there with the speed, the pace, the agility, the ability to push the open space, finding the middle of the lane the middle of the lanes constantly. I think that was very, very impressive for a player of his stature. And it was very great to see him come out and put his name on the map as maybe not so much as a 6th, 7th round pick, but possibly one that could be taken in the 4th or 5th. And again, I know everyone's going to talk about his size, but I don't care. He is a gamer. He can push the pace. He can play with anybody and act as a good support player where he's digging in the corners, doing everything he can to win. And yeah, I thought that he was very, very a very strong standout for Team Canada as well. Trying to find where Guelph finished, but I may be missing something right now because I don't see the Guelph Storm right now. Anyways, I'll probably come back to that. I'll circle back, but Lev Katzin was a big reason for Team Canada's success and a really big standout for me.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, here we go. That's why I was in regular season. It was in the playoffs. So yeah, Guelph Storm, despite the fact, sorry, Matt, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was in the wrong tab. So it took me a while to figure that out. Guelph finished dead last in the Western Conference, 10th. And to come in on a last place team and be well above, or not well above, but just slightly above a point per game, and you didn't play a full OHL season, that to me is impressive.
For sure. I mean, and yeah, on a bad team too. So he definitely increased his stock as well. There were, of course, these were the 4 teams that won medals. Anyone else? I mean, there were other teams in this tournament as well. So, Dayton, anyone else you want to shout out from the other teams that were in the U18s?
Ooh, put me on the spot here.
I know that comes to mind for quick. I guess Peter could go first if you want.
Yeah, let's let Peter go first.
Oh wow, now you're putting me on the spot. I mean, I really felt that there were a lot of like underrated, like a lot of names to talk about too that really stood out. I mean, I talked about Lev Katzen. I do want to say that for it being a weaker class for Finland, I really thought that their best players had to be their best players, and I thought they really were, and they stood out in a big way. Obviously, they didn't get the finish that they wanted, but they managed to get production from the sources that they needed to. Mats Westergaard, he had 6 points in 5 games. Lassi Bolias, it took a while for me to come around on him in terms of his offensive potential and, mobility and movement on the back end, but he looked very strong. He was above a point per game as well. Big factor for Finland on the back end. And I really liked Jesper Kotajärvi as well. Very strong shooter, two-way game, has that mobility. And, when teams still look for that two-way mindset, they want to see if a player like that could jump into the play. Didn't quite have the best production, but he was noticeable in certain aspects of the game. So I feel like the Finns, despite it being another weak class and not a whole lot of standouts, I think their best players were their best players, and they had to be, and they did just that.
For sure. I mean, and again, there's not always those high-end Finns. It's just they're solid. I mean, they're going to get picked, and they usually end up being pretty good NHLers, which that's why they keep being in these tournaments. That's why we keep seeing Finnish players in the NHL, because they're just very solid all-around guys, and that it's going to be the case again. Dane, you have anyone? It's okay if you don't. I mean, it's fine. Anyone else you want to talk about?
There definitely is one guy that needs to be mentioned, and that is German forward David Lewandowski. He didn't have the biggest tournament in terms of points. Only a goal, 2 assists in 5 games. Which, you'd hope a little bit more from somebody coming into the draft as a potential top, 2-round, 3-round player. But the way he scored his goals, like he's a clutch player. He scores when you need him to score. And he has such high-end skill that like he can kind of pick his shots. He has a lot of strength. And you saw that a little bit in the tournament. Germany, of course, has a bit of a weaker program right now. They've graduated some very good stars and now are rebuilding a little bit. Lewandowski, I would argue, is the top player from that group. And yeah, he gives you more of an all-around game that you could see a little bit in this tournament. Unfortunately, when you are up against some really tough guys, tough players, it's going to be tougher to show that. But I think he did very well with what he had.
Yeah, and I think, the time he was with in the WHL and what he showed there, that, again, these tournaments aren't going to destroy stocks. If they don't do well, all of a sudden they're a 7th-round pick or something like that. That's not the case, but it does help boost. I think mostly it boosts stocks for players, makes maybe them stand out a bit more. I don't think anytime it's like, if they don't have a good tournament, all of a sudden they're not going to be drafted where they should be. So there's a lot of really good players in this one. Lots of really good players for the next draft, like you said, Peter, too. So we're going to keep an eye out next year as well for some of these other guys to take another step forward in their development. Okay, well, that's the U18s. Like I say, that's the last tournament that is going to be to increase stock for a lot of these players. And the next one is the draft. So, and the combine, I guess, will be the next event where they can kind of maybe stand out a bit more. So that's coming up. But we're going to now go through Dayton's rankings, your first ones this year. And we've dominated with Peters, so there's no one else. So we've talked about. So Dayton, it's great to get another rankings we're going to talk about on the episode. So I'll turn it over to you. Let's go through your top 5 for this draft.
Okay, yeah. I think I kept it probably pretty standard for for most drafts coming out right now. Number one, Matthew Zator. I don't think there is a more dynamic, well-rounded player available. He didn't play very much, but the moments that he did play really established him as a top prospect. And I know, we've talked about this being a weaker class. There's not a generational talent. Matthew Zator is a first pairing defenseman. He is a guy who maybe can't transform a franchise, but he's going to push you forward. He is going to stabilize that blue line because he's just so smart. He's so good in pretty much everything. He has very few weaknesses, unless you want to count injury history. Number two, Michael Misa. He's been fantastic for this OHL season. I think 134 points, which is, I don't remember seeing that from a draft prospect for a little bit, especially when there's 62 goals attached to that.
Yeah.
I've seen some people talk about how there's a big gap between first and second. I think Misa's pushing for first. He, at least to me, is still a clear second pick, the second best guy, because he does bring a whole bunch of skill to that center position. But he is somebody who could potentially upset Zator, depending on what a team wants, like the Islanders. I still think they should go with a defenseman. I think they need that more, as we talked about in our little in our recap of the lottery. But they might choose different, and that would be I wouldn't be surprised with that. Number three, I have James Higgins, which maybe is a little higher than some others have him. I also think he's a really smart player. But now we're getting into a bit of a gap between the top two and then everyone else. The next group here, I think, is all very close. So I had a bit of trouble separating them. But James Higgins, I really liked his two-way game. I like his intelligence. I like his skating. He's a pretty good offensive player too. Maybe not the biggest offensive season as some were expecting in the NCAA, but still, point per game, 37 points, 37 games. That's great numbers for a freshman. And he looks very well set up to be a very solid NHLer. I would be very surprised if the Islanders took him first, even though he is a Long Island native. I would be blown away because I think there is two clearly better players. But he's very good. I very much like what Higgins is bringing. Number four, Anton Frondel, another very strong two-way player. We talked about him a little bit earlier. He has some very good techniques and habits. He's strong, and he's got a really good shot. So I think he is a very solid player for that next spot. And then number five, I got Porter Martone, who is everything you want in a modern power forward: big, fast, creative. I think his skating is not where I want it to be, but I'm not worried about it. It's just that was what put him lower than Higgins and Frondel for me, is that he's not quite as nice of a skater, and I think it limits some of his speed and agility.
Sure. I mean, and that, again, I think that those things can be developed and tweaked. If you already have it, it's something that can change. So yeah, good top five. I think this is probably going to be similar. Peter, any thoughts on the top five of Dayton here?
No, and I believe this is the same top five as me, and it's very spot on. I mean, I do agree that I think Misa, out of all of them, and I mentioned off the top of the show too, that if there's anyone to make the jump to the NHL out of this top five as soon as possible, it definitely is Misa. And I think that if he didn't have the best postseason, because Saginaw was, bounced in the first round. Underwhelming production, 3 points in 4 games. I think when you put up 134, you would have liked a little bit more in terms of overall production, but it didn't quite work out. And I think he was dealing with an injury, which is why he was added to Team Canada's U18 roster, but didn't play. And I think ultimately kept him out. So I think if he was healthy, if he was on a long postseason run, or even if he played for Team Canada, I really do think he would have pushed for that number one spot. But But yeah, I mean, Hagens at number 3 is perfect. Frondell 2. Again, I think maybe there's a chance that he could overtake Hagens because of that size factor, that the little bit more of that competitive edge. But Hagens and his IQ, it's really neck and neck, and it's basically going to be, very nitpicky on basically what a team wants at this point. And as for Martone, I kind of agree at 5 is a decent spot for him. I do think that with his ability to make Team Canada for the World Hockey Championship, I think that could be a tremendous opportunity for him to improve his stock. Had a goal and assist in the recent game against Hungary. Again, it's all pre-tournament, but this is great experience for him, where he was an underage player at the World Juniors. When he played and when he was given that opportunity to play, I thought he was really great. Strong draft year with the Brampton Steelheads, and now he's having that opportunity to jump ahead and play at the senior level, where they're still going to be a young team because they got the likes of Macklin Celebrini on that team as well. Mm-hmm. So this is a good opportunity for him to still improve his draft stock, where other players, their opportunity has already ended. Now this is Martone's chance to probably move a little bit higher up if he can. But overall, solid top 5.
And just quickly, Martone's also going to get to play with guys like Crosby, McKinnon. That's pretty good, guys.
He's on that top line. That's fun.
Not bad. That's something to watch. All right, Dayton, let's round out the top 10. Who do you got in the rest of the 10 here?
All right. Number 6, Caleb Denoyer. A very exciting prospect. He's a lot of fun to watch. He is a very strong player. He's a big player. He's got a lot of deception and shiftiness to his offensive game. He loves the physical side. He's right there with Hagens and Frondell, maybe even with Misa. Like he's pushing that top 5 group. From what I saw of those other guys, I liked a little bit more, but Caleb Denoyer is a very smart, strong, talented player. And I even saw a little bit of what I saw in Nate Danielson a few years back. Like just that ability to predict what's going to happen and be in the right place at the right time. And Denoyer has more offense than Danielson. So very, very good prospect. Number 7 is Victor Eklund. Man, is he fast. You can't stop him. And he can do everything that any other player does, but at that top speed. He thinks things so quickly. He never backs down. He's a little on the smaller side, 5'11", which isn't bad, 161 pounds, which is a little undersized, and maybe relies a bit too much on his speed. But I still like him as a top 10 guy. I think he is just so talented and should be able to follow in his brother's footsteps, who is doing fantastic with the San Jose Sharks. Mm-hmm. Number 8 is Roger McQueen. He could have been maybe a top 5 pick, but that injury, and I think there might have been a second injury, has just kind of ruined his season. He only played 17 games. He looked decent. Excuse me. Especially starting the season, he looked really, really good. When he returned, he looked okay. And then he looked pretty good. And then Brandon didn't stay in the WHL playoffs for very long. So there are some concerns with some consistency. But he has such good hands, especially for a guy standing 6'5". He is weaving around guys that he shouldn't be able to weave around. A lot of really raw skill that, if you can wait for it, it's going to pay off. Number 9, maybe a little higher than most, Lyndon Lakovich. He is probably one of my favorite guys in the draft class. There's a few WHL guys who I think are maybe being underrated a bit. Lakovich is one of them. He is just this beautiful finesse player. He is organizing plays. He is making shots. He's playmaking. He is somebody who can do anything that he needs to with the puck. I also saw him playing very smart defensively. He's not the most physical player, especially for someone standing 6'4", but his raw skill is, I think, easily a top 10 in this draft class. And then my last guy, probably lower than most people have him, is Jake O'Brien. Another pure playmaker. He's really good at picking out his teammates from across the ice and giving really quick, accurate passes. Very patient, kind of like I was mentioning from Philip Ekberg. He knows exactly when to move the puck. I wanted to see a little bit more aggression from him. I thought maybe he could wait for things to happen a bit too much. So while I like his patience, I wanted him to take the initiative a little bit more, which is why I put him under Lakovic, who I thought took the opportunity more often than just waited for the right opportunity.
All right, Peter, what about the rest of this top 10? I believe a little different from your rest of your top 10. So what do you think about this one?
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. I think Desnoyers with his playoff run right now has probably pushed them a little bit further up and possibly into that top 5 because of that combination of that smarts and offensive awareness, but with the IQ that he has away from the puck and to make himself available at any point at any time really stands out in a big way. So he's very dynamic with the puck, but without it, he's just as effective and can open things up very, very well. Eklund, again, I've always had probably Eklund just behind Frondell. He's always been in that 6-7 spot anyways. So to see someone like Desnoyers vault him, it really does make sense in the way that, you know, they're both very highly energetic. Again, Desnoyers probably has that factor because he's a center and probably has a little bit more height to his advantage. Roger McQueen, I do believe that, you know, in that 8 to 10 range, it is perfect for him, despite having a small sample size. I mean, we could say the same about Matthew Schaefer, but for McQueen himself, where maybe he showed a little bit more inconsistency or like, you know, trying to find his game a little bit since coming back from the injury. But I do think a team's going to take him in that early on within that top 10 range. Lakovic, yeah, I think it may be a little bit. I do understand why you're a little bit higher on Lakovic in that top 10, but honestly, ever since that Canada USA, you know, top prospect showcase, he was always standing out in a big way. And I think that the advantage that he also has is that separation speed a little bit, where he can quickly get that first few steps and break away and leave everybody in the dust. I think that's very, very big for him. And Jake O'Brien, I agree. I do think that with someone like with the tournament that Brady Martin had, I think he could push him down in terms of like top OHL centers and quickly move himself up a little bit higher up. I do feel like his patience is phenomenal. Again, I wrote his profile. I absolutely love the way that he takes that extra second to evaluate his options, open space up, but he could push the pace a little bit more. Again, maybe a little bit nitpicking here, not the best face-off percentage in the OHL as well. So you could always work on that, you know, in terms of timing, positioning, quickness with your hands in the dot. But yeah, I do think that if he's not in that top 10, again, maybe 11, 12 with some names that it can rise up, but he's definitely worthy in that top 10 conversation for Jake O'Brien.
Sure. I mean, this top 10 is probably, the top 5, I think, is pretty set. I think we're probably going to see that. I think beyond that is where you're going to see maybe some changes where guys move up, down. It's going to be interesting to see. And there's always those cases where you're like, oh, that guy came out of nowhere and got drafted in the top 10. So probably going to happen again. And we'll see who that is. All right. To close out the show, Peter, I'll give you the opportunity to maybe roast some picks, or I don't know. Who are too high or too low in here, if anyone?
You know, I'm going to be nice and I'm not going to roast Dayton too hard. His ranking did come out before the U18, so I think Brady Martin would be a little bit higher up, closer to that top 10 conversation. I feel like Cameron Reed, I've always been a big Cameron Reed fan this year, but the second half maybe just wasn't strong enough to have him in that 15 spot. I think maybe the second half may have diminished his stock a little bit more, but if he's able to find that two-way consistency and factor in of being a strong, confident, you know, steady puck moving defender, I think that will work out for him. I think maybe you could have swapped Reed with, the guy that you call or that's being called Mr. Clutch, Cash Money, Keyshawn Aitchison right now. There's a big reason why he was a fan favorite early on, and he continues to be that kind of player. You mentioned it in your breakdown of him, and what I've noticed throughout the OHL is he is a very, very clutch player. I mean, you expect, your forwards to be that kind of like clutch or have that clutch factor overall, but for a defender, that's absolutely impressive. I believe he led all defensemen in game-winning goals this year. And yeah, he had 6 game-winning goals, and 4 of them were in overtime. So you want to talk about clutch factor. He may not have the highest ceiling in terms of like offensive production, but the shot generation, the power that he has from the point in his one-timer, the physical edge, the ability to just flatten opponents in the open ice, and add in this potential factor where he could be he may not have that clutch factor at the next level, but if you do need to get it, Keyshawn Aitchison is going to be that kind of guy. And I've been a big fan of his throughout the season. I feel like maybe he could be a little higher up. That was actually the one note that I mentioned when I, saw your post on Twitter, and I just said maybe a little bit more love for Keyshawn, but that's about it. Other than that, no, everything else is pretty spot on. Even when you go into the second round too, you have potential first rounders where you have Henry Brasevich, Haoji Simon Wang, possible guys that could push that first round, even Milton Gastrin, where maybe not really sold on that, but if it's not late in the first, it's going to be an early second as well. I'm going to throw out Shane Van Sage as well. I think this is the guy that's going to be in the top 40 regardless. Again, production, kind of like Colin Potter, production may not be there, but for his stature as a power forward, obviously the speed is there, could get a little bit more quick, but when he powers through and he drives hard to the net. So that's one of the other names I'm keeping an eye on too, but overall great list, even extending into the second round.
Oh, thank you. All those were, I think, really good points. I initially, just a little bit of peek behind the curtain, I was thinking about putting Brady Martin as a second round pick. The initial clips I'd seen, I just didn't see anything special. And then I watched more clips, and then I started to see what all the hype was about. And after this tournament, I'm like, okay, no, I get it. he is too low on this.
He isn't flashy, but he is very effective.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, he's an excellent prospect. I've got him way too low. When I release my next one in June, he will move up significantly, almost definitely. Keyshawn Aitchison, like you mentioned, I didn't find enough clips that I really liked him, but I didn't dislike him. So I got to dig more into him and find some things, or find just, I think, some better clips, because what you've mentioned makes him sound very intriguing. Yeah. And then you mentioned Shane Van Sage. I did watch some clips. His skating it needs some work.
Yeah.
And I'm a big skating guy. I think that is one of the best attributes a player can have for making the NHL. And if you don't have it, that's going to make it a lot tougher to get there. And Shane Van Sage has a long ways to go before he is NHL quality skating. And so I kept moving him down. Initially, he was in my first round, and I couldn't keep him there. There was too many guys that I like better.
Sure. I mean, I actually didn't have any issues with anyone. I was always looking at where Cameron Schmidt was, and 17. I think that's a good spot right now. I mean, I think he could maybe push into the top 15. He had a strong start to the U18s, but then after that, he went nowhere.
Quiet a bit.
Went quiet again. Had an assist in the gold medal game, but started off the tournament with 2 goals and an assist. So I'm like, oh, he's gonna blow up and have a really good tournament, but he didn't. Points wise, that is. But I mean, he's a guy that I still think, I just wrote his prospect profile, so take a look. But I mean, he just reminds me so much of like a Connor Garland. Any of the smaller guys that made the NHL, he's a combo of like I don't know, a few players. I mean, he's his own player, of course, but you're looking at guys like Logan Stankoven, Cole Caulfield, Connor Garland, all those guys. I think he has a little bit of each of them. And, you know, he's got the tenacity, he's got the shot, he's got the speed, and the elusiveness in the corners. And the way he describes himself is a lot of how Connor Garland has always said, how he uses his size and how he has to use his size to be where he is. And that's, the recipe of being good in the NHL. So I think he didn't have the best tournament, but I still think he's going to be a guy that's going to be drafted hopefully in the first round. But I said that about Stankoven, and Caulfield was drafted in the first round. I believe he was 15th overall, which definitely shouldn't have been drafted there. He should have been in the top 10 or even higher. And we're looking at what he's become now. But undersized guy. I don't understand why teams haven't caught on yet. There's just so many examples now of guys succeeding, and they still get drafted way too low. So I see Schmidt maybe doing the same thing.
Let the Carolina Hurricanes benefit from everyone else's mistakes.
Yeah. And I don't know. The Canucks are in that range. They're 15th. They could draft him. They never draft Vancouver Giants players, so I'm not really no, they're in their backyard. But yeah. So we'll see where that goes. But thanks, Dayton. Thanks, Peter, for coming on. Dayton talking about the rankings and then the U18s, and lots of great stuff coming. As we say, the prospect profiles are flowing. We've got a lot out now. I don't know. We over 100? Are we pushing 100?
Close to pushing 100 right now. We're at that 83 profile mark right now. So we're slowly getting there. It'll be a matter of time before we hit 100 profiles.
All right. So lots of stuff to read. So take a look at all of our profiles out. We've got a lot of the projected first round out already. So make sure checking all those. There's lots more to come, lots of features, lots of fun stuff, lots of fun videos we'll be putting out as well. So make sure checking out everything at thehockeyriders.com and then following us for all that stuff until we get to the draft. And then, we'll keep talking about the next one, which is going to be fun too. But until our next episode, we will see you next time.